Cure Tinnitus shows and interviews are a member benefit for members of the tinnitus healing and coaching community at curetinnitus.org, where we learn how to heal ourselves from tinnitus from people who've already done it successfully. Our disclaimer is simply that our viewers and members take 100% responsibility for their own health and actions. It's a good choice, it's healthy, and it's required for participation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We hope you enjoy the path of liberation from tinnitus. Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Dinas Mikkel and I'm on location at a Vienna cafe to run the 13th Cure Tinnitus show with our resident expert Julian Cowan-Hill. Hello Julian and welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you.
The format of the show is basically gathered member questions followed by a one-on-one session between me and Julian where he works to talk me out of my state with tinnitus, and then we do an exercise together, and it essentially kind of rolls in because while we're doing the exercise with me, that then becomes the material that we work with to do the exercise for everyone. We've really had some healthy questions, and Julian, how about we dig right in?
Yep, sure, let's go.
Okay, this is here it is. Here's the first one that we're going to cover today. Dinas, during your own recovery, did you have periods of time when your tinnitus flared for a few days? I thought mine was under control, and then bam. I figure it has to do with some stress and perhaps fall allergies, but it's a real bummer handling it. I'm trying to ignore it and follow Julian's advice not to dwell on it, but when it comes back, it's so depressing. So I actually did respond to that, but what would your response be to tinnitus that flares and then they think it's connected to allergies and then it winds up being depressing?
Yeah, it's a really important part of the process. It's called aftershocks. When we start getting better and we start looking after ourselves, all sorts of processes happen. The body can really start to open up and let go and start shifting. And so we can go through a period of plain sailing and things feel much better, and then suddenly, out of the blue, we have raging tinnitus. I think it's very likely, just to put this in context, that this may well happen because the person's letting go and going into releasing mode. And when we release, very often you can get symptoms appearing out of nowhere, but then they disappear back into nowhere. And the more you go through this process of it appearing and then disappearing, don't react to it. What I would recommend is really majorly practicing refocusing and relaxation techniques during this phase. This is a critical time actually, because the person is starting to feel better, and so they're starting to let go, and then the tinnitus re-emerges. I really think it's top priority during these times to really consider what your needs are, and if you're able to focus and do some focusing techniques in the body, or if you need to go for a walk, or if you need to have a cranial sacral therapy session, it's really important to take action. The worst thing we can do is to sit in it and get flustered and wind ourselves up with thoughts like, oh my God, it's come back again, is it ever going to go? part of the mind may well start catastrophizing and going off on one. Even though people have experienced getting better, when this happens, it's like a dark cloud can descend and, oh God, it's ever going to go. So it's really, really important to take action and do something that is calming and focusing, because if it is just a release, which it probably would be if it disappears out of nowhere, then it's very likely to back off quite readily. In my own experience, when this used to happen to me a lot, it would just suddenly appear out of nowhere, and then if I reacted, that would hold on to it. But if I just got on with things, then it would back off quite readily. Might last a couple of hours, and yeah, I think it's almost like tinnitus is tapping you on the shoulder and saying, right, you think you've got it, you've sorted yourself out now, let's just give you a quick test. Yeah, and just one other thing to say in this is that it's a really good opportunity to, if you feel able to do this and able to manage it, and you need to really be honest with yourselves, to kind of let it be there. In your mind you might know, well, this will go anyway. But if the tinnitus is there raging, see if you can just let it be there and just really accept it, welcome it almost, allow it to be there. The irony is that if we really welcome it and accept it, then we let go. So, yeah.
That's very interesting. And I guess for me, one open question is, you're talking about focusing techniques. Can you mention the names of some of them, maybe things that you're talking about from your ebook, or things that people can find?
Focusing techniques, anything, it's really grounding techniques, anything that puts you in touch with body sensation. So, for example, some people might have learnt yoga techniques, some people might have learnt Tai Chi techniques, somebody might have learnt to clench and relax the muscles, like I've talked about a lot. It's really, really useful to have something involving the body that you can practice for at least 20 minutes. So tinnitus might be there, you might be emotionally all over the place and reacting, but the ideal thing is for you to get into some kind of practice. So, right, okay, for the next half an hour, I'm going to just do some yoga positions, or I'm just going to do some very, very slow Tai Chi movement. And if you can just keep sailing through with this technique, on this kind of focus, you'll probably find, it's very, very likely that you will find that the whole thing just sort of recedes into the, gives you a bit more space and starts backing off.
Okay.
All these pains and all these symptoms, if we really look at them and we really can meet them and see what's going on inside, they're constantly changing.
Okay. Now, one thing that I'd like to run past you to see if it's an appropriate assessment is that when you're stuck or when you're suffering, and then you get better, and you do have one of these flare-ups, that one's awareness can also come to, hey, if it's coming and going, if you're even calling it a flare, then it's not just this tyrant. It's not, and it's not an incessant, it's not an incessant tyrant anymore if it can flare. Because if it's an incessant tyrant, it's there all the time, it's bugging you, you're incapable of functioning. And so, in a sense, moving to flare and being conscious of coming and going is quite a nice step. It can actually be seen as progression. Is that kind of what you're all saying?